The maintenance bay of starport Epsilon 7 hummed with the usual symphony of hydraulic hisses and electromagnetic resonance. Chief Engineer Sarah Chen wiped a streak of coolant from her cheek as she calibrated the thruster assembly of a Velkari merchant vessel. It was supposed to be a routine morning, until she heard the distinctive pat-pat-pat of tiny claws on metal flooring. "Oh no," she muttered, turning around slowly. There, sitting at the entrance of the maintenance bay with his tail curled around his feet, was Nomi. The baby dragon's scales shimmered between copper and gold in the harsh fluorescent lighting, and his eyes, those impossibly large luminous amber eyes, locked onto Sarah with pure adoration. "Nomi, sweetie, you're supposed to be at home," Sarah said, crouching down. The dragon chirped and waddled forward, his wings, still too small for flight, fluttering with excitement. The Velkari ship captain, a tall insectoid creature named Click-Thraz, emerged from the cargo bay. His compound eyes immediately fixed on the small dragon. "Chen human," he said in his species' characteristic staccato rhythm. "What is that?" "This," Sarah sighed, scooping Nomi into her arms, "is my son." Click-Thraz's antennae twitched in confusion. "You're offspring? But it is reptilian. You are mammalian." "Adopted son," Sarah clarified, scratching behind Nomi's horns. The dragon purred, an odd rumbling sound that made her chest vibrate. "Found him abandoned in a cargo shipment 3 months ago. No idea what planet he's from. The xenobiology team is still running tests." Before Click-Thraz could respond, Nomi squeaked and scrambled up Sarah's shoulder, perching there like a scaly parrot. His tail wrapped around her neck for balance, and he nuzzled against her cheek with surprising gentleness for a creature with such sharp features. The Velkari captain stood motionless for a long moment. Then something unprecedented happened. Click-Thraz's mandibles, normally held in a neutral position, softened into what xenopsychologists had identified as the Velkari expression of emotional overwhelm. "It is..." Click-Thraz struggled with the translation. "Precious." Word spread faster than a hull breach. By midday, Sarah's workspace had become the most popular destination on the entire starport. The Zetherian dock workers, usually too dignified to show interest in anything beyond their shipping manifests, found excuses to pass by. The Grethian security officers, whose species prided themselves on emotional stoicism, kept volunteering for patrol routes that, coincidentally, included the maintenance bay. Nomi, for his part, was having the time of his life. The dragon had discovered that if he tilted his head just right and blinked his enormous eyes, virtually any sentient being would stop whatever they were doing to watch him. When he attempted to help Sarah by dragging a wrench 3 times his size across the floor, a Grethian guard actually made a sound that could only be described as a squeal. "Your hatchling demonstrates impressive determination," rumbled Commander Vorath, the station's Grethian security chief. The massive armor-plated officer stood at parade rest, but his eyes tracked Nomi's every movement. Sarah looked up from her work, a smile tugging at her lips. "He's stubborn, I'll give him that." Nomi, apparently exhausted from his heroic wrench-dragging, plopped down on a heat vent with a satisfied chirp. Within seconds, he was asleep, his little chest rising and falling, a thin wisp of smoke curling from his nostrils with each breath. Commander Vorath made a noise somewhere between a cough and a sigh. "Chen, may I capture an image? For security records." "Security records," Sarah repeated, not bothering to hide her grin. "Strictly professional documentation," Vorath insisted, already pulling out his holo-recorder. The true test came when Captain Zelthar arrived, a Crinian war veteran whose species was known throughout the galaxy for their aggressive territorial instincts and complete lack of social warmth. Crinians didn't form emotional bonds. They barely tolerated cooperation. Zelthar stomped into the bay, his exoskeleton scarred from countless battles, his forearms crossed in clear irritation. "Chen mechanic, my ship requires immediate..." He stopped mid-sentence. Nomi had woken from his nap and was now attempting to climb Sarah's leg, chirping frantically. Each chirp released tiny puffs of flame, harmless sparks really, but impressive for such a small creature. Sarah reached down and lifted him, and Nomi immediately settled, pressing his snout against her palm. "Is soft," Zelthar said suddenly. Everyone in the bay froze. "I'm sorry, Captain?" Sarah asked carefully. The Crinian warrior took a step closer, his battle-hardened expression unreadable. The young creature. "Its scales. They appear soft, not yet hardened for combat." "He's still a baby," Sarah explained, instinctively protective. Maybe 4 months old, we think. Zelthar extended one clawed hand, slowly, carefully. May I observe more closely? Sarah hesitated, then stepped forward. Nomi, curious about this large new being, stretched his neck out and sniffed Zelthar's hand. Then, in a move that made every observer hold their breath, the baby dragon licked the Crinian's palm with his tiny forked tongue. Zelthar stood absolutely still. Then, in the quietest voice Sarah had ever heard from a Crinian, "On my homeworld, we abandoned such vulnerability. We chose strength over softness. But this—" His second set of arms slowly rose, trembling slightly. "Human Chen, you have chosen to protect this fragile life, to carry it with you. This is not weakness." "No," Sarah said softly, stroking Nomi's head. "It's not." By the end of the shift, Sarah's maintenance bay looked less like a workspace and more like a gathering hall. Representatives from a dozen species found reasons to linger. They brought offerings: crystallized proteins, temperature-regulated blankets, even a small heating pad from the Zitherian ambassador's personal quarters. Nomi, overwhelmed by all the attention, had retreated to his favorite spot. Curled up in the hood of Sarah's work jacket, his tail dangling down her back, occasionally swatting her shoulder when he dreamed. Click Thraz approached as Sarah was packing up her tools. "Chen Human, I have question. All species here. We have different values, different histories. Many conflicts between our peoples. But the small dragon offspring, all find it compelling. Why?" Sarah paused, considering. She looked around at the assembled aliens, warriors, traders, scientists, laborers, all different, all watching her with curious eyes. "Maybe," she said slowly, "because Nomi needs someone to care. And caring for something small and helpless, that's not a human thing. That's not even an Earth thing." She smiled, feeling the warm weight of the sleeping dragon against her back. "Maybe that's just a living thing." Commander Vorath stepped forward. "The human speaks wisdom, the instinct to protect the young. Perhaps this is the true universal constant." As Sarah left the maintenance bay that evening, Nomi snoring softly in her hood, she passed by the station's central plaza. There, on the massive holo display usually reserved for security bulletins and shipping schedules, someone had posted a photo. It showed her covered in grease and coolant, holding a wrench in one hand. And there, perched on her shoulder with his wings spread wide and his mouth open in a joyful chirp, was Nomi. The caption, translated into 47 languages, simply read, "Starport Epsilon 7's newest crew member reports for duty." Sarah laughed, adjusted her hood to make sure Nomi was comfortable, and headed home. Tomorrow she'd probably have to implement a limited dragon visiting hours policy, but tonight she was content knowing that across the galaxy, different species with different values had found one thing they could all agree on. Baby dragons were absolutely, universally, impossibly adorable, and humans in their strange wisdom would carry them to work anyway.